Hello everybody and welcome to another episode of Box Office Talk. This is the show where I break down what happened at the box office, see if my predictions for the top 5 are correct, then make predictions for next week's top 5, so let's get right on into it. Last weekend, oh boy, I'm just gonna let you know right away, this is gonna be pretty bad. I predicted that number 1 would be Expend4bles, number 2 would be Dumb Money, number 3 would be Barbie, number 4 would be The Nun 2, and number 5 would be A Haunting in Venice. So, in case you couldn't tell, I was off in so many different ways. And I was looking through the comments, nobody got their predictions right for this weekend, but at least a common factor for most of you was like, well, at least the only thing you did was like predict Expendables 4 for number 1. And in my case, it's like, man, I thought Barbie was going to do a little bit better than I thought, and it kind of didn't. I thought Dumb Money was going to be in more theaters than I thought, had I known it was just expanding to a wider but still limited release, and it was still mostly just expanding next weekend. I probably would have played that differently. So yeah, complete goose egg on my predictions. Hopefully that doesn't happen again next weekend, but I mean, we're still in the drought of September for sure. Let's dive right on in. Number 1 was once again The Nun 2, once again squeaking by the new release. This movie made $8.4 million this weekend, which adds to a domestic total of $69 million. Funny, because it's the sex number. That has now outgrossed The Conjuring The Devil Made Me Do It by $4 million domestically, and it's now behind Annabelle Comes Home by $5 million, so we'll be seeing it outgross that in no time. Worldwide, it has crossed over the 200 million point, now sitting at 204 million. So it has outgrossed The Conjuring 3 there by $4 million, and it now needs 26 million until it outgrosses Annabelle Comes Home. So it's on its way to take down the third Annabelle film, which is not as good as Creation, but it's not the worst Annabelle film. So there's that. I think the more interesting thing to talk about, though, is that the fact that The Nun 2, it's not like it's having like a great hold, you know what I mean? But, the fact that it keeps getting to number 1, despite the fact that if you look at like the percentage drops it's having, it's not great, but it's still managing to beat out all these new releases, including our new one, number 2, Expend4bles. And the thing about this franchise, for me, the thing that was kind of shocking that they even went for a 4th movie, the way that they did, and we'll talk a little bit more about that, is that you can kind of see a waning interest in these movies. You know what I mean? Like, the highest grossing one worldwide is the second movie, but each one domestically, it seems like it falls off a bit with each one. And now we're at the opening weekends here. It made 8.3 million this weekend. So not only is that 7 million below what the third movie opened with, which used to be the lowest opening weekend, not only is it 20 million below what number 2 made, but it's also 26 million below what the first movie made. The Expendables movies, if you're looking at it just solely by opening weekend standards, was deflating. Like, so much so, like, over the course of those 3 movies it deflated, and they thought, well, we can really win them back over with 4. And I'm kind of astonished that they did that, but also because it still cost $100 million. The budget on this is $100 million. The first Expendables movie was like 82, something like around there. The previous 2 Expendables movies have hit exactly $100 million. This one also hits $100 million, and I'm going to tell you, as somebody who saw this movie, the money isn't really on the screen, unless Dolph Lundgren really costs that much. Like, it's kind of baffling that they thought they could squeeze by. That was the thing that I was thinking. It was like, maybe they thought they could make another one because Expendables 3, cost $100 million and it was the least grossing one, but it still was able to slip by its doubling point, $206 million worldwide run. I thought for sure they would take that lesson being like, okay, we can probably make another one, but we need to lower the budget. And by watching the movie, I didn't know what the budget was when I was going into the movie. I just assumed that it was lowered. It's the same, but it feels cheaper. It's so odd. Worldwide, it's got no help here. It's only sitting at 19 million, so it's 190 million away from outgrossing the Expendables 3. So, like I said, the Expendables 3 is the least grossing one, so worldwide it's behind it by 190 million, and domestically, you might think it's a little easier, but it's only behind it by 31 million for the entire run. So, I'm not expecting this to hold over well. Absolutely not. Are you kidding me? It's a nightmare. I don't know how this happened. It's kind of amazing that it did, though, right? I mean, it's one thing that, it's being released at a writers and actors strike and you don't even have this big cast out there promoting this movie. I don't even know how many people knew that an Expendables 4 existed, right? So that doesn't help, but then add in the fact that it still costs $100 million. That's just absurd. Let's move on to number 3, though, which is A Haunting in Venice, which, yeah, it didn't open great last weekend, and it's kind of wishy-washy as far as, like, will it, even double its budget. It made $6 million this weekend, which now adds to a domestic total of $25 million, so it's still away from Death on the Nile, this time by $20 million. Worldwide, it is sitting at $71 million, so it has outgrossed the initial production budget of $60 million by $11 million now, but it now needs to get past at least 120 to be considered a moderate hit, and to kind of end the series going like, hey, we went out on some kind of high, but I don't know, it still needs $59 million to outgross Death on the Nile there, and that's not even doubling the $60 million, but that's a little bit over that. So yeah, it's kind of I was kind of hoping like maybe it'll like barely drop from what it made on its opening weekend, but it's kind of like, no, the ship's running its course, it seems like, which is kind of a bummer because like I said last weekend, it's actually a pretty solid movie. I was kind of surprised by how much I enjoyed it, and it's certainly a better, and it's certainly a better movie that actually feels like a real movie compared to Expend4bles. Let's move on to number 4, which is the Equalizer III, which I have a little bit more respect for after seeing the low of Expend4bles 4, as far as like, older guy doing action stuff. Equalizer 3 may not be perfect or good in my eyes, but there's some kind of, respect going into the making of that and for the audience than Expend4bles. Let's stop ranting about Expend4bles. I'm sorry. Equalizer 3 made $4 million, adding to a domestic total of $81 million. So it is still off from the original and sequel by $21 million there. Worldwide, though, big news, it has crossed over its doubling point of its $70 million budget. It is now sitting at $148 million. So it still has a ways to go to outgross the first and second movie domestically, and $44 million away from outgrossing both worldwide, but we can at least say that the Equalizer trilogy was consistent enough to, just slip over the break-even doubling point for each film. That's an achievement. Good job. And hey, this movie didn't cost $100 million like Expend4bles. Okay, for real, let's try to move on. I don't really have much more to add, so let's move on to number 5, which was Barbie. Like I said, I was kind of thinking this one would do a little bit better, just with the promise of like never-before-seen footage in IMAX, but I guess it wasn't tempting enough, even though it did bump up just a little bit. But it made $3.2 million, adding to a domestic total of $630 million. It is still $22 million off from Jurassic World's number 10 spot for the all-time domestic runs list. Worldwide, it is sitting at $1,427 million now, so it's still $26 million away until it outgrosses Frozen 2's worldwide run and gets its number 13 spot. It's still a little bit of a ways to go until it cracks the top 10 there, and because now we are at a point where it seems like things are slowing down, it might not be able to, like, it has like a better chance of getting into the top 10 domestic runs for the all-time list, but still, like, it's broken so many records, it doesn't matter. It's so boring to talk about, I feel like, because I just keep saying the same thing, like, it's probably going to break all these records. It doesn't have to, though, because, it's already impressive enough, blah, 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 and all that jazz. It's a big hit. Let's move on to number 6, then, which is not a big hit, My Big Fat Greek Wedding 3. Although, clinging, it's not like it dropped out, like, immediately. It is clinging on for dear life, but let's talk about it. It made $3 million, adding to a domestic total of $23 million. I still don't know what the budget of this thing is, but it is still $36 million off from the domestic run of My Big Fat Greek Wedding 2. Worldwide, it is only sitting at $29 million, so it is $63 million off from the worldwide run of My Big Fat Greek Wedding 2. Yeah, I don't know. I wish I had a budget so I could like talk about like were they able to like just slip by, like did it cost like $15 million to make, or is it like a whole 20 or 25? Like, because I don't know, because even though it doesn't feel like an expensive movie, you never know with these quote unquote comedy vacation films. They can sometimes pump in a little bit more than you were expecting. So I don't know. And let's move on to something else, which is number 7. Kind of a bummer for me, because I like this movie. It's called It Lives Inside. If you haven't heard of this movie, it's a new horror film out there from Neon, distributor Neon. Really, really solid stuff. I enjoyed it. I've seen the trailer a couple of times in front of some other stuff, but I don't know how many people know it's out right now. So if you want to check it out, please do. It could probably use the help. I don't know what the budget of this thing is. I'm going to assume it's pretty low, like maybe 5 to 10 million. But either way, it opened with 2.6 million. So not great unless the budget is lower than we think, in which case they're doing fantastic. I don't know. I would hope that word of mouth could be a thing that helps this, but I don't know at this point, because we're about to, next week is going to be pretty crowded, and also it's going to be crowded, but I don't think any of them will be like really big hits in that sense of the word, so it'll be interesting. So let's just move on to number 8, which is Dumb Money. It did actually crack into the top 10 despite it still being in limited release, but it made 2.5 million, which adds to a domestic total of 2.8 million because it was in even more limited release last weekend. I don't know what the budget of this thing is. I'm hoping that they release it next weekend with its official wide release so we can have something to talk about, and hopefully it does well. We'll talk more about that when the predictions come around. It was a decent movie. I don't know if I would say it was like amazing or a masterpiece, but I was in a theater with some people who seemed like they were really invested with the story as it was happening, like in real life. I don't mean like in the movie, like the story in real life that they were invested in, and that's why they're seeing the movie. Like some of them were even wearing like the headband that like the Paul Dano real life character was wearing, so it seemed like they were fans in some way. So maybe those people will turn out. I don't know. Let's move on to number 9, which is Blue Beetle, which has some fans still, turning out, but still not enough to double its budget. It did, at the very least, cross over its initial production budget. I know we always speculated, like, is it 100 million or is it kind of around 125? I'm just going to jump into the worldwide one right now. The total is sitting at 122. So we're kind of at a point where it's like, okay, it's at least crossed over the initial production budget, and I don't know how much more it needs to make to actually double that or break even, but, good on it that there's still at least some people that cared about the character, hearing that word of mouth for these past couple weeks. It did only make 1.8 million this weekend, adding to a domestic total of 69 million. So similar to the other Warner Brothers film here, The Nun 2, the sex number. So that is now 15 million behind Birds of Prey for the other DC films in the DC Extended Universe, if that's even a thing, which it isn't. Worldwide, like I said, 122 million, so it's 10 million off from Shazam! Fury of the Gods run. If it can squeak by that, I don't know if it's going to be here next weekend, though, in the top 10, so I can't really report on it, but if it can at least squeak by that, that'd be pretty cool for this movie. And now closing out the video, number 10, Oppenheimer. Probably the last time we're seeing this, because I don't expect this to hold over well with these other movies that are coming out next weekend and the things getting pushed out. So it was great to see Christopher Nolan really, really stick it to Warner Brothers, It made 1.6 million, adding to a domestic total of 321 million. And that is 127 million behind The Dark Knight Rises. And for the 2023 domestic runs list, it's 37 million off from Guardians 3. Worldwide, it is sitting at 925 million. So that is 73 million off from The Dark Knight. And then for the 2023 worldwide list, it's 435 million away from the Super Mario Bros. Movie. So in its last little stretch of a theatrical window, it wasn't able to top Batman, and it wasn't able to top Chris Pratt. For both domestic and worldwide, but at the very least, look at everything else it's done. Like those don't matter. The fact that it got even this close to the Batman movies is kind of wild. It outgrows Batman Begins, for God's sake. Like, that's insane. Now it's time for the fun part, the predictions for next week's top 5, and I do think this will be fun, because we got a lot of movies coming out. Dumb Money is getting, into wide release, and we got Paw Patrol, Saw X, and The Creator, and everything else that's already out right now. But I genuinely don't think any of these will be like a big hit. Like The Creator, so my prediction for number 1 is The Creator, just because I think that'll probably be the biggest opening weekend, which I know might be a gamble because it's an original sci-fi movie and not an established IP like Paw Patrol or Saw X. But looking at like how the first Paw Patrol movie did in theaters, and that was 2021, but it didn't have like a great response. Like, it was solid for 2021, but it wasn't like a great one, and I don't really see like a better go around this time happening for this. And Saw X, I feel like, the appeal to this has kind of dwindled, like, especially with Spiral kind of losing people's interest, and maybe the fact that Tobin Bell is back, that'll win people over on that. But I don't know. I feel like Saw is just kind of done as far as like most people's like, let's go to the theater right now. So, and also I don't know how many people even are aware that it's coming out. I feel like the marketing has been a little lax on this, but that could just be me. So I think number 1 will be The Creator, just because there has been at least a significant push to get the word out on this. So I'm hoping for a pretty solid hit on this. The budget's like, from what I remember, like 80 million. So it only needs to like, get at least 150 to 200 million to be considered a success. So I'm really hoping for that kind of run for this movie, whether I like it or not. We need more original movies of this scale from directors, So that's my prediction for number 1. Sorry. Number 2, I do think will be Paw Patrol: The Mighty Movie, though, which I didn't really realize was coming out so soon, and then here it is. Number 3, I think, will be Saw X. Number 4, trying this again, dumb money. I think it will expand enough, not to take down Saw or Paw Patrol, but I think, it'll have its audience. And then number 5, The Nun 2. But what are your predictions for next week's top 5? Leave them in the comments below. And as always, thank you guys for watching. Make sure to subscribe. I'm Jackson Fulcher. See you guys next time.